The first really major Wonderlands patch has arrived, and it comes with a ton of highly requested changes that should make the game feel a lot better overall. Ahoy, my name is Duke Sloth, and today we're talking about Wonderlands patch 1.020A. Wonderful name. This is the patch that comes with the Coiled Captors DLC as well, but it also comes with a variety of additional changes that I want to talk about a little bit. The patch should be live on all platforms by 9:30 AM PT on April 21st. In the patch notes for some reason it says 12 PM PT, but every other announcement says 9:30 AM, so I'm assuming that's the correct one. For some people, probably the most important change of this patch is that lucky dice are now tracked per profile instead of per character. So if you unlock the lucky dice on one of your characters, it'll be unlocked on all of them as long as you load and save each character once after this update. I personally love this change, as I did not want to roll another character until it's confirmed that that carries over, because I did not want to do that for every single character, and the fact that it updates for existing characters as well makes it especially great. Something else that was apparently highly requested was quick change stations now allowing you to rename your pets and your character. But a bigger change is that Chaos tiers can now go up to level 35, and along with that comes a new tier of gear as well. At Chaos level 35, you can now get Primordial gear. I'm assuming this will work the same way as the Volatile gear currently works, where it's basically relatively hard to get, relatively low chance. Volatile gear will obviously be easier to get at higher Chaos levels, and Primordial takes the same role until there's potentially another increase of the Chaos levels. It's going to be interesting what this increase in Chaos levels means for build viability, or how much the Volatile gear can offset that. I feel like some classes will kind of have a harder time with this than others. Also, enemy waves in the Chaos Chamber's Endless Dungeon specifically are now starting sooner, so that you'll have more targets at once, which is something I think the game benefits from in general, so hopefully they do that in other areas as well. Moon Orbs, the currency to reroll item enchantments, has been entirely overhauled in how the pricing works. Now you can hold up to 16,000 Moon Orbs instead of 4,000, but a single Moon Orb drop is now worth 20 instead of 10, Moon Orb stacks are 80 instead of 40. So you'll get more Moon Orbs overall and you can store more. However, Moon Orb stacks, the one that give 80, are now slightly less likely to drop compared to single orbs. The final chest in the Chaos Chamber will now drop 14 Moon Orb stacks, so overall you'll probably get more from that as well. And the reroll cost now accounts for the rarity of the gear. So legendaries are more expensive to reroll in comparison. And the cost of the reroll will stop increasing after 4,000 Moon Orbs. So you'll be able to reroll even at peak cost relatively frequently with a higher pool of Moon Orbs you can have and a higher amount of Moon Orbs that you get. Previously you could run into a point where you couldn't reroll gear at all because you couldn't afford to. This patch also contains tons and tons of fixes for crashes, interactions, visibility of abilities and weapons and whatnot that I will not go into in detail, but I will talk about some of the more relevant ones. Some people could previously not connect to the game without linking accounts, and that should be fixed now. Loot luck also gets some fixes. On one hand, sometimes your loot luck would change, at least in the UI, when people would join a co-op session, and on the other hand, loot luck would not update correctly when you did something that would increase your luck. This was only a visual bug apparently, but now it should display properly. Shrine buffs from the overworld, on the other hand, would sometimes simply disappear, and not just visually, after saving and loading the game, and that should no longer happen as well. A very big one for the Spellshot players among you is that the Buffmeister bug was also fixed. If you're unfamiliar with this, previously the bonus damage that Buffmeister adds was applied from the spell that you're holding in your primary spell slot, even when Buffmeister is in your secondary spell slot, which could allow you to deal way more damage with it than intended. This is now fixed, but the Spellshot will probably still remain an incredibly potent class. There's also some gear that could drop above the maximum player level, and that has been fixed, and likewise some gear would remain locked once you've reached the level required for it, and now you can actually use that as well. The next one is for the elemental players among us. This is a very frustrating one. Puddles of water were becoming too spicy when being shot by an elemental weapon with the relevant modifier, so we can finally walk around the map without fearing for our lives more from the floor than from the enemies. Co-op got tons and tons of fixes. You can't double sell anymore, you can no longer see enemies as dead when they're actually alive. There are fixes to split screen, the displays in terms of what is displayed on the items in co-op. Tons and tons of stuff there that overall should make any form of co-op a fair bit better. With this patch there's also a new weekly event, and this one is Cosmetics Collectors, which increases the chance for cosmetics to drop from bosses, especially head and face gear as well as armor colors. However, these drop rates do not have any impact on the drop rates for other gear, so you're not getting less weapons because of this. As usual, there's also a new featured run, this one featuring Lance and the Frost King. One very curious additional change is allow Dragonlord's Spectral Wyvern to regen Dragonlord's shield in Chaos Chamber's Endless Dungeon. I'm not 100% sure which Spectral Wyverns this refers to, but if it refers to ones I'm thinking of, then this could really amp up the difficulty a lot. Last but not least, we also have some class adjustments. The first ones are for the Berserker. Increase Dreadwind's damage as it scales with higher levels by 28%. I also fixed a bug along with that regarding the melee frequency appearing incorrectly in the HUD. As a Berserker player, I'm obviously happy about this buff, but I'm kind of surprised that Dreadwind's getting buffed before Feral Surge, which I feel is the much more underwhelming skill overall, but we'll see if we get changes to that in the future. The Clawbringer gets significantly more changes. The first one is pretty straightforward, increasing the damage radius of Cleansing Flame's melee damage. The other changes all affect the capstone Storm Smite. The cooldown of this perk is entirely removed. As a reminder, the skill is whenever the Fate Meter activates their action skill, they call down elemental bolts that deal fire ability damage or lightning damage to all nearby enemies. The description used to be the skill has a long cooldown, I guess not anymore. In addition to that, the damage of Storm Smites as it scales with higher levels is increased by 50%, and the targeting of the skill is improved. The delay between the puddle and the lightning bolt spawning is also removed. So this skill should hopefully feel a lot better than before. I know that quite a few people aren't that happy with the current Clawbringer tree, so giving them some buffs makes sense to me. So overall this patch really shows that the Wonderlands devs are listening to the community requests, and I think that is absolutely a good thing. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, clicking the bell and maybe the like button, so that you get updated of future Wonderlands content, and I know that you want to see more Wonderlands content. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. Duke Sloth, out.